Good evening, American literature scholars. I'm coming to you from Keller, Virginia. Those of you who've had me in class before or who came to the orientation session know that the way I run a discussion board is that I let students take charge of that during the week it's up, and then when it comes down at the end of the week, I review the discussion board, and then I post some sort of summary where I respond to the discussion board. Sometimes this is a voice email, sometimes this is an email, and for you lucky scholars, it's going to be a video. I got myself a webcam, and so I will be using it this semester to make videos where I summarize and comment on the discussion boards. Last week's discussion board was on a White Heron and local color writing, and what I asked you to do is to take a look at a link that talked about the various characteristics of local color writing, and then apply that definition and those characteristics to a White Heron. And this week's discussion board, it was a good start. It's not where I want it to be yet as far as depth of thought and level of thought and moving the conversation forward. And just let me repeat that idea about moving the conversation forward. If you come into the discussion board late in the week, that's okay, but you really need to read other people's threads before you post your own. Because what ends up happening if you don't do that is that you may end up repeating material again and again. And we had a little bit of that this week. Something else that you can do to help each other, if you're one of those who tend to come in early, try to wait and maybe not go over every aspect, so that if you're going through 6 or 7 characteristics, maybe just pick 2 that you think are the most interesting to talk about, and talk about those 2, and leave a few others for other people for when they come in later. It's just a suggestion to try to give everyone a chance to contribute in a positive manner to the discussion board. There was some repeating this week when we got towards the end of the week. Now let me tell you about some things that I thought were good and some things that you all need to pay attention to for improvement. Part of what you have to do in a literature class is learn the discourse of the subject area, and you have to be careful and try to be precise in the language that you use. For example, and I'm going to say names, and if this bothers you, please email me and let me know, but I mean it nothing but respectfully, and it needs to be referenced so that people can go back and kind of take a look. So hopefully that's okay, and again, if it's in any way, I try to be very positive and constructive, but if you find it in any way offensive or disrespectful or bothersome, let me know that, and I'll keep that in mind. But what I'm talking about was, let's see, the conflict symbolizes nature. This was something that Kashana Kelly had written, and actually Tehran was taken by that and thought that was kind of cool. But what I thought, when you say conflict symbolizes nature, you have to be really careful with that word symbolizes, because the word symbolize means it stands for something greater than itself. Now, when you think about a conflict, by definition, a conflict is a problem or a struggle that needs to be addressed and solved, or that's causing really the story to move forward. So if the conflict symbolizes nature, that's not quite as precise as I would like it to be. What about nature? What sort of problem is there in nature? How does it stand for nature? So think about that. Tehran actually was interested and intrigued by that idea. Someone else, it was Kimberly, said that the characters symbolize various things, but again, when you say symbolize, it's got to stand for something greater than. And so, for example, Kimberly had said that Sylvia, for example, is a girl. She's young and ambitious and yet cautious with a big heart, and she symbolizes that. She doesn't really symbolize that, like she is that. So she stands for something greater than herself. So I will say that Sierra this week was probably the top thread. There were some good ones. Jo Lynn's was good, and Anna's was very good, and I'm going to comment on a couple other points that I thought people made that were good, but overall Sierra was the most succinct and really on target with what was going on in that story. So you might want to take a look. I reopened the discussion board for you to look at, and you might want to go ahead and just take a look at Sierra's, Anna's, Jo Lynn's, and then a couple other points that I'm going to make. Charlie, for example, and again, I'm going to talk about particular areas that I thought were good, but that might need to be developed more. Charlie said that, her struggle was between the world of nature and our human desires. And I love that idea, but then there were no specific examples of what he was talking about. So do you mean like, if we can take it that far, the sexual desire, the crush that she had on the hunter and her desire to fulfill her stereotypical role as a female, to give him what he wants and give it up, give everything that's important up for him, So I would love to see that idea develop more. And that's the kind of thing, if you see something like that, like where somebody makes a really cool comment, but maybe they don't give specific examples, you can jump in and provide an example. Or if they give a specific example and you see other examples, jump in with that. So I really like that idea, but it wasn't developed enough. Let's see. Oh, I did like the part of Anna's thread that was very good is that she takes that internal struggle to the next level with her analysis. There is an internal struggle. Sylvia is attracted to the hunter. And some of you brought up some lines that showed, she watched him, with love. There was a thrill. There was excitement in her gray eyes. So she's attracted to him. She does like him. But at the same time, we know she's loves nature and feels so much more at home in nature than she did when she was in the city. Liz Knapp, near the end of the discussion, mentioned how this could sort of represent sort of country rural living versus industrialized kind of living, and that's one of those local color themes that you often see. So that's definitely happening in this story. But Anna took that analysis of that internal struggle to the next level, so that particular part of Anna's thread was very good. I'll give you another example, something that Rachel did near the end of the week is she commented on Sylvia's name as kind of symbolic. And just, Silva or Sylvan is a prefix that means the woods. And so really, even though it's not tied into a particular area like Rachel says, it does mean of the woods. And so it really does kind of illustrate the affiliation that Sylvia has with being in the woods, sort of opposed to the industrialized, urban kind of aggressive world of the male who kills what he loves and doesn't just observe what he loves but kills them, and makes them his trophy. So Rachel's one comment about the name was interesting. And also, if you want to move the conversation forward, I noticed dialect. Brittany had brought up dialect but didn't get deep into it, and Janae commented on how some of the story was hard for her to read and kind of joked maybe she needed help with her reading, but really some of that regional dialect is kind of hard to understand, but it's one of the characteristics, and it's really a northern New England, like in Maine, that kind of dialect. So that is a part of the story, and that does create that feeling of a particular region, which is part of that local color writing. Tyler also touched on the idea of dialect, but that could have been just something that you discussed in more detail. So when I put these discussion forums out there and they're multi-layered, don't feel like you have to comment on every single part of it. Pick something that's interesting to you and focus on that. People who do that early will help out people who come in later to have something to write about. And then, you're challenged then to focus on something like that if you come in late and a lot of other ideas have been sort of exhausted. So commenting on and providing examples of some neat ideas that you see people posting, questioning things you don't understand is another way to move a conversation forward, and trying to spread it out so that the first couple of people don't sort of go through every single part of the prompt would be ways, I think, to move that conversation forward. In order to get full credit, you really have to participate in a positive way and not just repeat material. So I would say that you certainly all get the idea of local color writing and regionalism. That's obvious in the discussion board. Go back in there and review the ones that I said were particularly good. Anna's discussion of the internal conflict, Sierra's overall thread, the touch on dialect, the touch on the name that Rachel had. And hopefully this feedback will help you for your discussion board that's due next week. So thank you for listening to this lengthy mini lecture, and I hope that you found it helpful. So from Keller, I'll say good night.